First Take. It is Monday. Shay Cornett here with you. Stephen A. Smith is here in a little bit. We'll be joined by others because today, football frenzy going on. Free agency. In fact, we have some breaking news happening as we speak. I do see Adam Schefter sitting down. Shefty, I know you are texting and you are busy, but what is the breaking news you could give us?
We've got the Dallas Cowboys making a trade for a defensive player. Rashan Gary posted his goodbye to Green Bay on Friday, said he was hacked, but he knew what was coming, and now it has happened. He has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 2027 fourth-round draft pick. He will be reunited with Kenny Clark. The Green Bay Packers and Dallas Cowboys now become dance trade partners. We saw them make the Micah Parsons deal. Now we see them make a Rashan Gary deal. The Dallas Cowboys had been in the market for defensive help. They were after Max Crosby. They offered a 1 and a 2. The Raiders got the 2 ones from Baltimore and wound up dealing Max Crosby Friday night to the Baltimore Ravens. The Dallas Cowboys checked in on Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack opted to return to the Los Angeles Chargers on a 1-year, fully guaranteed $18 million deal on Saturday. So no Crosby, no Mack, and now they have pulled off a trade for Rashan Gary, a fourth-round pick, minimal return. The Green Bay Packers get back a pick for a player that they might have released, that they were open to dealing, who said goodbye to Green Bay on Friday, and the Dallas Cowboys have now brought in another defensive lineman in the form of Rashan Gary.
Okay, thank you, Shefty. I know you are very busy today. I'm sure we'll check in with you a little bit later on. We appreciate the news. And so now, obviously, this bolsters a Cowboys defense that ranked towards the bottom in almost every statistical category for the majority of last season. A commitment to the defensive side of the ball, Jerry Jones says, huh?
Give them a lot of credit where credit is due. They definitely were targeting to improve their defense. We understand like that because their defense was horrid. We all get that part about the Dallas Cowboys. Statistically speaking, they were at the bottom rung of the NFL for, in practically every category. So that's definitely a plus in that regard. Here's what I would say, Peter and Shay, about Rashan Gary. When Micah Parsons first arrived, the combination of the two were a nightmare. And then Micah Parsons got hurt, and you had to put out an APB for Rashan Gary. Where the hell was he? So you're looking for him. You're like, wait a minute, where's the level of production? Where are those sacks that we were looking for? He finished the year with like 7.5. This is the second consecutive year he had like 7.5 sacks. But I'm talking about the last 8 or 9 games or whatever. It was a virtual no-show in that category. So, again, he's an improvement. There's no doubt. As one would surmise that he's going to help the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys were right to go after him after you didn't luck out on Max Crosby and what have you, or Khalil Mack. I get that part. But let's pump the brakes if we're thinking this is going to be some sort of a game changer. Rashan Gary can play. He is not a scrub. He can ball. But he's definitely underproduced according to expectations in the latter part of the year once Micah Parsons went down. And that's what I think we have to remember here.
So to Stephen A.'s point, he had sacks, 7.5 sacks weeks 1 through 8. From week 9 on, he had no sacks. So that's why we needed the APBs. Right, as Peter Schrager joins us now. And Schrags, what's your reaction to this news?
They're not done. I think Dallas is rebuilding a defense, and we saw just the first whack at it. I think you're going to look to get a veteran corner, a veteran safety. I think you're going to get a veteran inside linebacker. And Stephen A., I think they're going to use those 2 first-round picks that they didn't trade for Max Crosby and go defense as well. So whereas Rashan Gary's not the big swing of a Max Crosby and is not going to steal headlines like a Micah Parsons, he is a piece to a defense that already has Quinnen Williams and already has started the pieces to building this thing back up. Jerry's no fool. He's no idiot. He knows that last year's defense was unacceptable. Christian Parker, 34-year-old defensive coordinator they brought over from Philly. This is just one of many different moves you're going to see this week, and maybe one of many different moves you're going to see today.
One of the things I wanted to, let me chime in here, Shay. Peter, let me ask you this, because I mean, this is how I feel, but I don't know definitively how right I am about this. I love Max Crosby. It would have been nice for the Dallas Cowboys to get him, but I'm not of the mindset that they should have given up 2 first-round picks for him either. He's 28 years old. He ain't 38. He's still got some years left in him. The brother's a future Hall of Famer. I get it. He can ball. But 2 first-round picks I thought would have been too much to give up for him. How are you? What's your thought process with that, Peter?
Yeah, and Adam will corroborate with this. They were in on it. They were talking. And around midday Friday, Baltimore offered 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. And the Raiders looked around and they said, are there any other takers? Is anyone else? And the Cowboys, for all of their wild moves and all their image of being this team that's so flashy, they showed great restraint. And they're like, we will not trade 2 first-round picks for a 28-year-old player coming off a knee injury. Max Crosby might be the perfect addition for the Baltimore Ravens for what they need and how far they are. But for the Dallas Cowboys, they showed great restraint and said, we'll use the 12th and the 20th pick, and we'll find some other pieces in free agency. They did not up the ante and did not offer 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. And Stephen A., I'm with you. I actually think that wasn't going to be the best move. You don't give 2 first-round picks if you're the Dallas Cowboys when you have all these other pieces to fill up. When you're the Baltimore Ravens, though, made a lot more sense considering how close they are to getting back into that playoff mold.
In my estimation, you give up 2 first-round picks for an elite player that is younger or a big-time quarterback. That's what you give up 2 first-round picks for. You understand? Max Crosby is elite, make no mistake about it. But 28 and coming off a knee injury, playing the position that he plays, no, I'm not doing it for that. You giving me a star quarterback, that's one thing. You giving me a star cornerback that's younger, I'm for that. But at his position, at age 28, coming off a knee injury, I'm not giving up 2 first-round picks for that. So I agree with Jerry Jones on that part.
Okay, well, Jerry Jones does make a move today. He acquires Rashan Gary. Thank you, Schrager. We'll talk to you a little bit later on. Obviously, the Cowboys need to bolster that defense. By the way, Rashan Gary had 33 pressures last year. No Cowboys player had over 32. So he definitely helps.
He's a late-round draft pick next year, so the 27 draft. Trey Mack, what grade do you give the Cowboys for this trade?
I'm going to give Jerry and company an A. And I think the last part that you said, Greeny, a day 3 pick next year for the Dallas Cowboys, you miss out on Max Crosby. Now you're bringing over Rashan Gary, a player that has 15 sacks over the last 2 seasons. And it's step 1 for them rebuilding this defense. Getting a guy like that, reuniting him with his former teammate and Kenneth Clark, I think it's a good move for the Dallas Cowboys.
I've got to tell you, I completely agree, because the way you have to look at this, look, I was one, everyone knows, and half jokingly, I want the Cowboys to be good because people are interested in the Cowboys. So half jokingly, I always root for them. So did I want them to get Max Crosby? Absolutely. But here's what you have to ask yourself. Would you rather have Rashan Gary and 2 number-1 picks this year and all of the ammunition they have in next year's draft, or have Max Crosby and none of the rest of that? That's really the choice they made. I think this is the better option.
Right. Look, they were willing to do a big deal for Max Crosby that included one of their first-round picks this year. So obviously they see him as a different kind of player. But they didn't get him. So, you know, you're gonna cry about it, or you're gonna go do something else. Rashan Gary's obviously a player they like. They've been talking to the Packers since last summer about players on their defense that would make sense. So obviously they had an idea that he's a fit.
I guess what I'm saying is maybe on some level,
yeah, I agree with you.
Not getting him turns out to be the better option.
It could well be. I mean, look, the Max Crosby is probably going to have a better year than Rashan Gary. But for the price, absolutely. Because now what do? If you would have had to spend the 12th pick in this year's draft to get him, now you get a player that can help you and also still have that pick. So absolutely right.
There are good corners. There are good, a lot of good defensive
Another
players
edge rusher if you
who go
want
in
to
the
do
middle
that.
of this draft that the Cowboys can take with that. And so let's then get to the trade that came on Friday night. What grade would you give the Ravens for their deal in which they sent 2 ones to the Raiders for Max Crosby?
Well, I give him a C+. The price is weird to me because this is very un-Raven. They've never traded a single first-round pick for a player in their history, and in one deal they trade 2. I am uncomfortable when successful teams change their principles and go away from them. Now, I understand the Ravens perceive this as a player who's going to be even better for them than he was for the Raiders. The Raiders never play with a lead, and he's still been a productive pass rusher. The Ravens always play with a lead, and they feel like they have trouble putting fourth-quarter games away. So if he makes that level of difference and they were Max Crosby away, awesome. But 2 first-round picks for a team that doesn't usually operate that way, that feels a little desperate.
And I hear you, Graz. I just feel like for the Baltimore Ravens, like it is desperation at this point. You're in a situation where you have one of the best players at a quarterback position in Lamar Jackson to play this game, a 2-time MVP, could have been 3-time, and you haven't been able to not let alone win a Super Bowl, just be able to get there. So you do have to do something out of the ordinary because what you've done over the last several years with that quarterback isn't working. So I do like the fact that they went out and got Max Crosby and went for it all. Get a guy that can completely change one side of the ball and see what he does.
So again, the action is coming fast and furious and hasn't even really begun yet technically. You see Shefty, who's already got the carpal tunnel working with all the phone and all of the stuff that's happening here. Shefty, as everyone sort of catches their breath, take us through what we've seen and what you think is the most important stuff fans need to know.
All right, Greeny, within the last 90 or so minutes, we've seen the Miami Dolphins take on the largest salary cap hit in NFL history, releasing Tua Tagovailoa, incurring a $99.1 million dead cap charge. They're designating him a post-June 1 cap casualty. Tua now becomes a free agent, looking for a new home. He joins Kyler Murray and Geno Smith and Kirk Cousins, who will be released later this week, in addition to the free agent quarterbacks that are already out there, like Malik Willis and Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco and Marcus Mariota and Carson Wentz. A lot of quarterbacks out there. Tua is the newest member of that class. Then we saw the New York Jets trade a 7th-round draft pick to the Miami Dolphins for Minkah Fitzpatrick. The Pro Bowl safety comes to New York. The Jets have been in the safety market. They're looking to upgrade their defense. Now Aaron Glenn gets a defensive signal caller from the Miami Dolphins. Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to sign a 3-year, $40 million contract with the New York Jets. So the Jets had cap space. They had room. They get the deal done for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And the trade that just came down moments ago, the Green Bay Packers are getting back a 2027 4th-round pick for Rashan Gary, who they were planning to move on from. But the Dallas Cowboys stepped in and were willing to give up a 4th-round draft pick. And now Rashan Gary will go to Dallas, where he'll reunite with Kenny Clark in the center of that Dallas Cowboys line. The Cowboys still will be adding to their defense. They'll be looking to make other moves today. But Rashan Gary is headed to Dallas after posting a goodbye to Green Bay on Friday.
Okay, Shefty, outstanding, and obviously you'll be sitting in that in your little Shefty spot there all day long, all through First Take, all through the special today with McAfee and Company and everything else. Let me come over here to you very quickly, J-Mac. Malik Willis is the one that fascinates me. I have no idea how good I expect him to be. He was a guy who we talked about as a 1st-round pick the year he was coming out, winds up falling all the way to the 3rd, kind of fell completely off the radar. In limited action, he looked very good for Green Bay, and now someone's going to pay him big money. What do you think of him? Is he going to be a difference maker here?
I believe so, and I look at the Miami Dolphins and the Arizona Cardinals, because what you just said, a small sample size, I would look for somebody that knows him. You look at the Arizona Cardinals, LaFleur, Mike LaFleur, little brother of Matt LaFleur, and then also the general manager, Monty Ossenfort, was in Tennessee when Malik Willis was drafted there. So then you pivot over to the Miami Dolphins. Head coach and general manager were both in Green Bay while Malik Willis was there. He practiced against Jeff Hafley's defense every single day throughout the course of the season. So I look at those two organizations. Yes, you haven't been able to look at a ton of film of Malik Willis over the last few years, but you know the person, so you have a little bit better feeling of what you're going to get.
Yeah, because he's still a projection, right? Like, you know what he can do. You know he's going to bring a rushing element, and you know he's looked a lot better as a passer in limited work with the Packers than he ever did in Tennessee. But if you're Mike LaFleur, you have a pretty good line to a scouting report. Your brother coached him the last 2 years.
Right.
You can talk about, like, what does he do well? What kind of things do we need to stay away from? And obviously, to your point about the guys in Miami as well. With Miami, the question is finances. Can they afford him with a $99 million Tua Tagovailoa cap hit pending over the next couple of years?
The biggest in NFL history. All right, we continue to roll on today. The coverage